Hello and welcome to a very special edition of the Alternative Car Show. There's plenty of cars going past, so please forgive me. But this, as you can tell from the car behind me, is the Lancia Stratos Replica Special. I've been wanting to do this ever since I started the channel, and it seemed appropriate that one of the last big shows that I do for the channel is this one. So please click on like, subscribe. We will still be making videos, but this is one of the very last specials. So enjoy the show. Our story begins in the late 1980s in what is now regarded as the golden period of the kit car industry. Kit cars were not just 7S cars or Volkswagen Beetle based buggies, but they were getting braver. They were making 1930s roadsters, they were making family saloons, and now they were getting even braver still. They were making exotic cars. There was a race on to produce Lamborghini Countaches, which by the time a realistic one came out, all the ones that followed were basically taken from body shells that were taken from molds from one Lamborghini Countach. Two different manufacturers were racing to get a Stratos to market as well, but they started with two completely different Stratos cars. So quite separately and from two completely different directions, they raced to get to the market, and by the time they got there, it was a matter of months between them. The two manufacturers were Transformer cars with the HF2000 and handmade cars with the Allura.
My name's Jerry Hawkridge, and I've been playing and making cars for a long time now. When I first did the Stratos, it was a result of a collaboration between a very nice chap called Roger Perry, who's sadly no longer with us, who had a beautiful lime green car, much like the one on the left of me on the stand, and the registration number I never forget was FYH4V. And he was a very talented photographer and a real Lancia nutcase, a bit like myself. My dad had a Lancia Flavia and things like that, and loved Lancias, and I'd always had a passion for Italian cars as well as some of the other cars that I liked. And Roger did express some interest in being able to supply some of his fellow friends and people who he ran the club for with the Stratos with some spare parts that were starting to become unavailable. And so we had a situation there where there was a demand for a few parts, and I was the sort of person who could produce them for him. And then we decided that, well, maybe I should make a replica of a Stratos, because I wanted one myself, and I couldn't have afforded one at the time. And I had another couple of friends. One of them was Gordon Cruikshank, who is now the editor of Motorsport magazine. And the other was another friend of mine called Colin Artis, who had already made a 427 Cobra replica for. His father happened to be Ronald Artis, who owned the Heron Group, from what I remember, and was the importer for Lancia and a few other things into the UK. Anyway, they suggested that I should make a replica of a Lancia Stratos and try to use the mechanical parts wherever I could from a Lancia Beta. At the time, the Lancia Beta was a really nice handling car, went really well, had a 2-litre twin cam with the option of a supercharger, etc. And my brief was to see if I could use as many parts as I could for those, because they'd got a bit of a reputation for falling apart after 3 or 4 years due to rust. They had a bad reputation for rusting. And so I was set the task of trying to produce a car that used those bits and pieces. Originally I only intended to do a car for myself, and I thought I might do a couple more just to help finance it. But we started doing a few, and it was obviously quite a lot of interest. And the first time we showed a car, we got order for 14 cars, which was a bit of a shock and a bit of a surprise. We didn't quite expect that straight out. We decided to call the car a Transformer because the idea being that we transform a rusty Lancia Beta into an exotic supercar. And with 2 litres and a supercharger, it wasn't that far off the performance of an original street Stradale. We couldn't have timed it better with the name of Transformer, because a few months later, after us announcing it, there was a toy company who brought out a robot that was able to be changed by fiddling around with as a child's toy. By fiddling around with it, it could be made into a Lancia Stratos. So you've got this Lancia Stratos toy, change it to a robot, vice versa, and it was called a Transformer. We couldn't really have asked for better publicity if we tried, because you know, someone said, "Oh, they've stolen your name." I said, "Well, let them keep stealing it, because it's great." Anyway, we produced a few cars, and it got to a stage where they were, you know, we were having to make them, taking orders for them rather, faster than I could make them. And we ended up having to subcontract the chassis design. No longer could I afford the time to make the number that were required at home and organise making the body shells. And on top of that, of course, we had to make sure we could get things like windscreens made and stuff like that. But having got a perfect car to copy helped tremendously. A little bit later on, I got approached by another gentleman who happened to be my son's godfather, Grenville Griffiths, and he happened to have one of the ex-work checkered flag cars, Group 4 car, and he wanted me to do some work on that and to revamp that and to replace the bodywork. So all of a sudden we've got a situation where I've not only got a Stradale to work from and copy, but I'd also got the option of a Group 4 car to work from. So we were able then to offer both options. We went through a bit of a recession not long after that, where it got to the stage where I was also running another company called Hawk Cars, which we were producing 289 Cobra replicas. And because of the recession, it was caused us a bit of a hardship financially. The turnover was insufficient to require all the necessary paperwork and accountancy fees, etc., for Transformer cars and Hawk cars, and so we had an agreement whereby Hawk cars then also took over Transformer cars. Nothing changed as far as who owned it. It was still me, but it was just one company from then on, and it was Hawk cars. Prior to that, it was Hawk cars were making the parts for Transformer, which it wasn't a profit making thing, it was just the way it worked. We then got to a situation where people wanted faster cars and bigger engines, and the V6 Alpha became a popular choice, but it wasn't until the 164s and stuff arrived where we had a transverse engine installed with a nice 5-speed gearbox that it became relatively straightforward to do. And then we, instead of just making the HF2000, we were then making the HF3000, which was basically the V6. And we made quite a few with either 308 Ferrari engines in, or even the 246 engines. And there were one or two made that actually had Honda engines. And we started sending some out to Japan, believe it or not, with a mini engine in. And the reason they went to Japan with a mini engine is that in order for them to make it straightforward to register, they had to go with an engine, but the engine would be changed once they got into Japan. And once it got into Japan, they were putting a Japanese engine in and throwing the mini engines away. So there was a limited number went out there. But we've been making these cars, started in around 1984, and we've been making them ever since. And I've made nearly 700 now, or maybe over 700 now. And we've got to a stage now where I've started doing the ultimate one, which involves producing a car which has got an original steel centre tub body shell and chassis.
The one to the right here, isn't it?
The one to the right here, which is identical to an original car, absolutely identical. And it's basically a tool room copy, and we're doing a limited run of those. And at the same time as we're doing that, we're doing an updated version of our normal road going Stradale car and our Group 4 car, which is a sort of halfway house version, where I'm trying to make the normal kit, if you like, look even more like an original car. I mean, they're pretty faithful, but when you open the front bonnet clam of one of our fiberglass kits, they do look slightly different because of the choice of donor parts to those, the appearance of the those which are got the steel shell with the X19 modified pedal boxes, the X19 modified steering, and the slightly different layout at the front. But we're now doing what I call a halfway house version, which we're calling the Classico. Classico is in honour of Roger Perry, who had a little company called Classico, and back in the days when he was supplying the parts for the Lancia. What we've done is we've remoulded and retooled the front of the car so that when you open the front of the new version, it looks much like the steel car was originally, but at a much more affordable price. If you're going to build one with a steel shell, you then need to put in the right Ferrari Dino engine, which like the one on the right here has. You really need to have quite deep pockets. It's quite a big budget car. Whereas to do the fiberglass version with the Alfa Romeo in it, it all becomes affordable. It's not horrendous money. I mean, you can produce one 40,000 upwards. Whereas if you're going to start doing it with a steel shell and a Ferrari engine, you're going to add best part of 100 grand to that bill.
Yes, it's David Jousey. I purchased the car back in 1987 when I speak, and I took 1.5 years to build it basically. So,
and this is an Allura.
Sorry, this is an Allura built by Handmade Cars, who was Stuart Gross was the gentleman actually ran Handmade Cars at the time. And I did actually look at both Allura and Transformer. There was a long waiting list for the Transformer, so in the end I plumbed for the Allura. And at the time he did actually have some special offer on where he got the windscreen, the gear change and the exhaust system, so that was quite an incentive to go with him as opposed to the Transformer.
So what was the build like? I mean, these things are not going to be, it's not going to be your basic kit car, is it? It's going to be quite complicated. How was it?
Well, I was very lucky because my father had a coachworks. So the car was parked up in his coachworks for 1.5 years. And on a weekend, I would be down there slowly but surely putting it together. I did buy a Lancia Beta saloon, that's because I worked in Cambridge at the time, for £150, which supplied all manner of bits, the engine, the wiring loom, lights, steering column, pedal box, all these sort of things, so and the registration.
So the build was relatively straightforward, would you say? Or
yes, relatively straightforward. My brother, he was an expert in the electric side of things, so I entrusted because we used the original Beta wiring loom and we had to extend it with it being rear engine, which my brother took care of, and it's worked pretty reliably. I think I had one breakdown in 2019 where I lost all ignition, but that's been about it really. So but the build itself, slowly but surely, 1.5 years I think it took before it was entered for its first MOT, which it passed.
So what was the donor component required for the Allura?
Well, for the Allura, it was the 132 Fiat front upright stub axles, X19 door handles and catch assemblies. You could use the X19 over centre catches to hold the rear and rear sections down. I didn't bother with those. I've done it slightly more tidy in my opinion. Well, the engine and gearbox, that came out of the Lancia Beta saloon. So that supplied that. The steering rack comes from a Vauxhall Chevette, a high ratio rack. The brakes, front brakes, they were off the 132 Fiat. The rear brakes and rear struts are off the Lancia Beta, but it's a Lancia Beta coupe, so the saloon ones were too tall, so they couldn't be used.
So in a lot of ways, both the replicas at the time were using the very similar components to the original Stratos in terms of the running gear.
Absolutely.
Apart from the engine and gearbox.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they were out of a Lancia and Fiat parts bin effectively. You know, there's all manner of bits that if you actually look in the parts bin of Fiat and Lancia, they can be traced back, and that's what was fitted to the original Stratos. So in a lot of cases, back in 1987, all these parts were readily available because they were in scrapyards. Different story now.
In the early days, of course, both the Allura and the Transformer, pretty well all of them were the 2-litre beta engine. It's it's much later on that the V6 started getting fitted. So your car is pretty a good example of the early Stratoses.
Yes, it is. It started off originally with the 2-litre beta engine out of the saloon that I'd bought. It was a bit weary, so I built up another engine, of which I built it up, but I never fitted it because there was a friend who'd actually got a Guy Croft engine. So I thought for £400 I'm better off with that because it's been built by the man that knows what he's doing. So that was subsequently fitted. It's still in the car now. That was connected up to a Volume X gearbox, which is a taller diff. I actually stole it off somebody off eBay for £10, would you believe?
Really?
It was advertised, so it was at Grimsby. I had a job out there, so I put a last minute bid in, and lo and behold I got it. And when I went to see him, I was actually quite embarrassed to hand over £10 for a Volume X gearbox, because these days I think £700 is nearer the mark.
So the cost of the build at that time, I mean, obviously the value of money has changed in the years that have followed, but what was the build cost of the car?
Well, I worked it out. I mean, my dad and myself did the respray. Obviously I did all the other bits of work. I reckon £7,000 to £8,000, including the kit and the wheels. You know, it was on the road for £7,000 to £8,000.
And the current values are somewhere in the region of £40,000 to £50,000 for a minimum.
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so.
So I bet you never even thought of it as an investment when you built it.
Not at all. No, it was just something. I like the look of it. I ummed and ahed. I thought, if I don't do it now, it's never going to happen. And I'm just pleased I did. And it's been developed over the 30 odd plus years I've had it. You know, it's still ongoing at the moment. Things get altered and changed because you can.
And how many miles have you done in that time, roughly?
It's done 41,000 miles since it was completed, so just over 1,000 miles a year basically. Some years a bit more than others, but yes, it has been down to Silverstone. It also went to the Le Mans Classic back in 2018, which there was far more expensive cars broken down at the side of the road, or exotic should I say, than mine, which was, you know, because you are going a bit fingers crossed, thinking will I get there or not. I did have a whole host of spares with me, like water pump, clutch slaves, and anything that's relatively small that you wouldn't get hold of if it did break. So anyway, it was successful and there and back without any problems.
What's the public reaction to the car?
Well, yes, it is quite interesting because I mean, I did a trip over to the Lake District. We had a run over at the Lake District. I'm going through Amblesides. The chap slowly walking across the road. He looks at me, he puts the phone up and says, "Nice car." But you're often getting thumbs up from motorbikes, lorries. I even had thumbs up from a Ferrari, which surprised me. But yes, I think it's a shape. People realise it's obviously something exotic. Not a lot of people know exactly what it is, but it's obviously Ferrari-esque in its look.
And I don't need to ask if there's any regrets. This is obviously exactly what you hoped it would be, and more than that, I imagine.
Absolutely, yes. No, you've built it, it's part of you, as you might say, so you know, I won't be selling it anytime soon, and it's just great to drive because it puts a smile on people's faces. I mean, you could be driving along and think, why is that car driving slowly alongside me? You'll see somebody with their mobile phone, smartphone, taking pictures. So that's happened on numerous occasions, so it does put a smile on your face, definitely.
Well, thank you very much for letting us look at the car, and we'll get some shots now.
Right, lovely, great. We'll be welcome to them.
Right, I'm John Cross, Rallycross driver for more years than I care to remember. This is actually year number 52 of competing this year, and I've done Rallycross for most of my career. Retired just after 2000 and then missed it so much, came back about 5 years ago, and we built this to contest the Retro Rallycross Championship, which in the Super Retro Rallycross Championship, which I won last year, so I'm the defending champion this year. But today we're sprinting, and that's just to shake down a new engine and do some start line settings in readiness for the next Rallycross. I'm not sure which way round, but
Yeah.
it was old enough to be eligible, and it came with all the papers from the 80s.
Yeah.
And a rally car logbook. It was a Forest rally car based up in North Yorkshire. The paperwork I got with it is green and white with a Vauxhall engine in.
Oh right, it's, it's a different car than
It
one
was.
I
I can't think of the guy who originally built it. It was a guy who
Andy?
he went on to work for ProDrive eventually.
Yeah, Andy. I think it was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was Andy something.
Yeah.
I met him. He came to one of the meetings at Knock Hill a couple of years ago and had a look at the car and was surprised how much different it was to when he last saw it.
So what was it like when you found it, and what have you
It was-
changed quite a bit.
The guy that I bought it from had owned it for 10 years with the intention of getting it back on the road, which he never did, and it really was just a rolling shell that had an engine perched in the back but not properly mounted. It was just a starting point. You know, I'd have tried to do a new a chassis, a Hawk or a LB, well, Lister Bell as they were at the time, and now LB sports cars, but neither of them could do a chassis that was homologated at the time. I don't know if either still can, but I mean this was 5 years ago now. So it was a question of finding one that had a bit of history so it would be eligible for retro. Seems a bit silly when you think, you know, you can go and buy Mark 1 or Mark 2 Escort, everything brand new, build it as a brand new car, and that is eligible, but one of these isn't, but still.
So tell us about the specification of the car as it is now.
It's semi space frame, but it's still got a steel. It's not, because it's not fully space frame, it don't have to comply with the space frame rules, so it's not got the big heavy roof. We made all new body moulds to the shapes that we wanted and the dimensions, stripped out everything. I think the only thing on there of the original car that's not modified is the lower front wishbones. They are still as they were, but the mounting points are altered. It's now got Olin suspension, it's got a VR6 turbo engine built by Julian Godfrey and a Gemini DTC Volkswagen gearbox.
So explain the choice of engine, because it was quite interesting when you told me about
well, the Rallycross rules dictate that you can use, well, the retro rules, as long as it's pre-91, any engine, but it's got to be the same number of cylinders and in the same orientation. So i.e. it's got to be a mid-engine transverse V6, and apart from that anything goes. It can be normally aspirated or turbo, so we picked the VR6 because that was the smallest V6 engine, and also it's relatively cheap pound per horsepower. Have you got any figures with it? Because you just put. We haven't got. We've still had some engine work done, and there's still work in progress. But it's making a hell of a lot more torque now than it was before. Once we know it's reliable, then we'll sort of start talking about figures. But don't want to get too optimistic or pessimistic till we know it all works.
the car. Today is basically a testing session, isn't
Yeah.
it, with the car?
Well,
has the championship started? This
Yes,
year?
the championship's already started. The Five Nations has been 4 rounds. I've only done 2 of them and come second on both. Unfortunately for me, the same guys won all 4. That's Lee Woods in the Escort, but there's another 4 still to go. So it's might sound a bit of a tall order, but to win the last 4 it's not impossible.
Yeah.
You know, need a bit of luck as well. But now we've got the misfire problem sorted out. Hopefully we'll be there or thereabouts.
And the sprint today, you were trying basically the engine's been worked on.
Yeah.
And you were working on the launch control in the first 3
Well,
months.
it's not. We can't actually have launch control on retro cars because you're not allowed wheel speed sensors or anything like that. So it's really, it gets called that. It's a start line rev limit.
Yeah.
And that's it was good on the first practice, but not so good on the other 2. Whether it's because the tyres have got high, that still needs work. But that's one of the reasons for coming today. I don't normally do sprinting, but it's local motor club that I've been a member of for 40 odd years. It's a charity event, so it's all for a good cause, and it's a bit of practice. And what a nice day to do it.
It is a fantastic day, isn't it?
A bit too hot, really.
So when's the next Rallycross?
The next Rallycross is round 4 of the BTRDA Championship at Blighton, first weekend in July. And then after that we've got the World Championship at Lyddon, then the BTRDA Championship at Lyddon, then we've got a couple of 2 double headers within a month at Pembrey, Five Nations and BTRDA.
Well, I wish you all the luck in the world with that, and yeah, thank you very much for letting us look at the car and inviting us over today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed the programme. Please click on like if you did. Feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below and subscribe. Click the bell and you'll get notice when we've got more videos up, which we consistently do throughout the year. And if you want to be really fantastic, why not click on our Patreon page, www.patreon.com/nwin. You can support the channel with pledges and see the programs before they go live on YouTube, and also you can see some exclusive content in the higher tiers as a reward and a thank you for supporting us with the filmmaking that we do.